Before we dive into some questions.
Sure. All right. Well, thank you, Allison. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor, for opening up the town hall for us this evening and continuing our town hall series. Be accessible, listen to people, see what's on people's mind. And
Entirely welcome.
well, I appreciate it very much. And Dan, to our friends in law enforcement, thank you for what you do here for Ellicott, and thank you for your service, and we appreciate it very much. Great to be with everybody this evening. See a lot of familiar faces here tonight. See some new faces. We welcome you. These conversations are open. We're here to listen as well as maybe give you our input on some of the issues of the day. Today's been a great day. Like we just said, we left Chautauqua Center, saw that facility. They're seeing 200 patients a day coming through the doors there. And I'll tell you that integrated care model that they're deploying, I think is a great thing. I think it's going to serve the community very well. They're doing great things up in Dunkirk. And to see it now in Jamestown is something that we should be rightfully proud of. And I think it's going to be helpful to many of the folks here in Chautauqua County. We're up at Fredonia Place this afternoon, meeting with some senior citizens, so that was always good. Some 91, 92, 94-year-olds. A gentleman who flew in the Royal Air Force as a tail gunner. So it was really nice to see him and to have a conversation about things that he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But that being said, I know we got some questions here, but maybe an update from Washington. Right now, obviously, the topic of the day is impeachment. Impeachment has taken up kind of the airwaves, kind of taking the oxygen in the room. As I have publicly stated, and I'll state here again, I don't support the impeachment process. I don't support the inquiry. I think when you look at impeachment, I think the lessons of President Clinton, the lessons of President Nixon, and when impeachment is deployed historically, we're talking about overturning a duly held election in America. And going down that path, in my opinion, is not warranted here today. And but it's going to happen in regards to the continuation of the impeachment inquiry. My concern is, I hope that there will be members on both sides of the aisle that say impeachment is not helping people's day-to-day life in regards to issues that they're facing. And I'm still working on some legislative items that could get to the finish line. One of the biggest ones that I'm hopeful and optimistic to get done is the Mexico-Canada trade agreement. It is needed. It is ready to go. And I know that it has the votes in the House and Senate to pass and be updated. And it's a matter of getting the Speaker's office to allow this to occur so that we can have a vote up or down on Mexico-Canada. You might ask, why is that so important? Mexico and Canada is so important in particular to our district here in the 23rd Congressional District because of our farmers and our dairy farmers in particular. And for the first time, we will have access to the Canadian dairy market in a way that has not existed previously. And we have also closed on some major problems that we have. Come on in, welcome. Major problems we're having in Mexico in regards to the shipment of goods that are kind of coming through the Mexico existing trade relationship in what I would say is an abusive way, where they relabel things, they have rules of origin that are not enforceable, and so you see a lot of manufactured goods coming through the existing structure that truly are not, in my opinion, should not qualify for the Mexico-Canada NAFTA terminology or trade rules because they are not true Mexican or Canadian or U.S. Products. And so there's some great steps there that are being made in the agreement. And then also, for the first time, we take on the issue of digital commerce. Because if you remember, when NAFTA was negotiated and signed into law, was it 25 plus years ago, the internet didn't really even exist. The internet commerce didn't even exist at that time and place. And so right now, we don't have any rules in order to deal with digital commerce between Mexico, Canada, and elsewhere in the world. And so for a whole slew of reasons, for our manufacturers, our farmers, I'm very supportive of getting this through the system and getting this taken care of. The other area that I think there could be some bipartisan support, and the Problem Solvers Caucus, that group I chair on the Republican side, we got behind some drug pricing legislative reforms that could potentially not solve the problem 100%, but move us significantly down the path when it comes to transparency, accountability in how drug prices are set in America, and make sure that we're setting prices that are encouraged to be lower prices as opposed to what we have now, which is an incentive system that does not cost contain those price increases and actually encourages drug prices to go up in an uncontrolled manner. So hopefully we can get that done, but I will just tell you, I'm becoming a little bit more bearish on the outcome of the drug pricing legislation, and I'm more optimistic on Mexico, Canada than I am drug pricing. Other issues that we're working on, and I'm sure we're going to touch upon them a little bit, is probably Social Security. Always interested in your input on how we're going to fix Social Security. Medicare insolvency is also something we should keep an eye on, because Medicare insolvency is only 5 years out. We're essentially 5 years out from where Medicare will not be able to cover its bills if we do nothing in regards to fixing healthcare costs when it comes to Medicare. So we need to act on this sooner rather than later, and Social Security is only about 12 years out, plus or minus a couple years, depending on whose report you read. And so if we don't deal with those two problems, you're going to put millions of Americans in harm's way, and that is just not right. So we need to fix these in order to make sure they're taken care of. So that being said, and someone's alarm's going off, Jason is like out of tape, he's out of battery.
Plenty of room.
He's got the radio going. Good to see you, Terry. Thanks for being out here tonight. But let's have a good conversation, and as always, the conversation I find very productive when people respect each other, when we have an open conversation, and be willing to really take other people's input into consideration. So that being said, turn it over to you, Allison.
We're going to start with climate, actually,
Yes.
which is one of the things we are focused on too. So thanks for coming. Can you tell us what the Problem Solvers Caucus is doing to address climate change?
So the question of climate is something I think you're going to see this boil up into the next election cycle, and rightfully so. And what we're kind of doing in a bipartisan basis, and just so we're clear, the Problem Solvers Caucus has a very official position when we get to it, when we get 75% consensus, where we've got our whole caucus educated on the issues and come to a position that we can support as a group of 48 members. We have not gotten, in the Problem Solvers Caucus, to a 75% consensus on the issue of climate, though there's many of us that are talking about it, and hopefully we'll be able to get there in the future. But on our side of the ledger, if you would, what we are promoting to cure climate is innovation. That is going to be the cornerstone of what you'll see, I think, coming out of the Republican side, as well as bipartisan support. And one of the things that I'm a strong believer in is if we can get some of the tax code sections aligned appropriately, and we have an innovation tax credit that I was just on the phone with some folks from California, as well as Texas, as well as the East Coast, to align stakeholders. Even Bill Gates we're working with in regards to having conversations with Bill and Melinda about how do we solve this problem and how do we come together as a country to address it. And what the innovation tax credit is about is recognizing if you're going to solve this problem, the existing technology that exists will not do it. We need new technologies. We need innovative technologies that deal with the issue of carbon, that deal with the issue of not only existing emissions that are going out, but the emissions that have already occurred, and how you clean up the carbon that's already been emitted. And so the cornerstone of this innovation credit is to say tech neutral, don't care what industry it is, don't care if it's fossil fuel, don't care if it's alternative, don't care if it's clean, but it's going to be an innovative technology standard that has metrics that measure effectiveness, efficiency, and how you move the needle on climate. And I will tell you, you can rely on government standards, and we've had a lot of debates across the aisle in regards to this, but if all you do is put out standards, I'm afraid they'll give you a false sense of security that this issue is going to be addressed in the short time frame that many folks want it addressed in. Because standards are as good as the technology that is out there to achieve them. And so if you put zero emission standards and you don't have technology to achieve that, what good is the standard? And so what we're talking about is unleashing American innovation in order to make it accessible around the world to the next generation of technology that's going to help this problem. So that's kind of where I'm coming at it from, but ma'am, you may have a counter or additional input?
Additional input?
Please.
My understanding is that organizations such as the Rocky Mountain Institute are of the opinion that we have many sorts of technologies that are not being sufficiently implemented now that could be of great benefit. And I think one of the things that might be helpful would be urging the public to reduce their uses of fuel to a much greater extent than is being done now.
Okay. And so on the Rocky Mountain position, if I hear correctly from you, deploying technology, and that's what this innovation credit would be about, is taking that technology that's not being deployed and making it much more accessible and available to folks around not only the country, but one of the things I'm looking at is like right now you got coal plants internationally. China's manufacturing coal plants that are essentially plug and play coal plants. And what they'll do is they sell it to emerging markets and to lower income countries because it's cheap. It's affordable for them. And so what we need is a technology that when people are making that choice, they will have a competitive choice that they can deploy as a nation, as a country that's looking to put power production, for example, into place so that they don't have to choose coal, they have an alternative to that. And so that's the cornerstone of what I'm trying to do on the innovation tax credit going forward. But how would you encourage us to reduce power usage in America? By telling people, mandating it, or what would you do?
During the Second World War, as an example, people were dedicated to making an all-out attempt to limit our use of resources so that they could be used for military means. If we were instructed, as we were, for example, with seatbelt use, that this is important, this is vital to the future health of the planet and the people on it, that we use less electricity, that we entertain ourselves without so many devices, video games and so on, that we use automobiles that have higher rather than lower efficiency of petroleum use. And my understanding is that the Bush administration, the Trump administration has reduced the push to increase the energy standards of automobiles. That seems to me a direction we should reverse now. We need to improve our efficiency standards for automobiles and perhaps transition to more electric ones, that electricity generated through wind, through solar, through waves, through all sorts of technologies that already do exist.
Yeah, well, they exist, but they're not vital. And that's it. Like if you look at, wind, solar has gone through a extremely innovative period of time and has become much more viable than others. But when you look at tidal and you look at storage and energy conversion technologies that are out there, a lot of what you're referring to is just technology that sounds good, and may work, but it's not practical because it's not affordable. And so that's what we're trying to encourage, is most of those to come online.
Maybe we need to be able to afford them rather than to afford some of the unimportant things that we spend our money on.
Yeah. And so, because this is the classic debate I'm having in Washington, D.C. with folks, because there are some folks in D.C. that are advocating, look, if you want to make it affordable, then make it affordable vis-a-vis other existing energy by driving the price of energy up from fossil fuel supplies, for example. Have gasoline have a price point of $9 to $10 a gallon at the fuel pump. And then therefore people would choose, because they couldn't afford $9 to $10 a gallon, they would choose the alternative renewable price point of $5 a gallon. Just throwing math out there in regards to illustrate the point. The concern I have with that is if you do that, there's a lot of lower income folks in America that are going to have a tremendous amount of burden placed on them at $9, $10 a gallon vis-a-vis choosing for $5. And I just don't know how practical that is. I don't know how fair that is to lower income folks and middle income folks to put that burden on them. And so I think what I'm interested in doing is getting that price point for that technology coming online cheaper vis-a-vis existing market conditions. Not inflating the market to a higher price so that you're choosing between two high price points for the energy use.
On that topic, I appreciate the concept with the poor people, but couldn't we give them a tax break? Couldn't we give people a tax break for buying an electric car?
Okay.
I mean, that would offset the cost, and it would push up the drive for people to go to electric cars.
So my position on it would be in response to that, why don't we make the electrical vehicles technology so cheap on its deployment that there's not necessarily a subsidy in order to buy the
How would
electric
you do
vehicle?
that?
With the innovation tax credit. For example,
So the car manufacturer is getting a tax credit?
Who gets the tax credit?
yeah, so the tax credit would go to the car
So the
producer
car would be cheaper?
with so they would produce the technology and the car would be cheaper at the initial purchase price. And to me, that would drive better human behavior. If you look at the economics and you read the economists that would be looking at this, they would say, what will actually change behavior?
But if the
But the
company gets
purchase
the
price.
tax break, we'd have to guarantee that the price of the vehicle goes down. Otherwise, you've got CEOs with
Who's
better.
gonna make them do
But
it?
right now, I've seen.
Well, see,
two-
this is the point, and that's where the two tools are. There's an ideological separation that clearly we're not going to bridge here, because your point is well taken. Some folks would say government should come in, tell those CEOs, this is how much you're going to sell that car for. And I just don't see how that
No, but then
works.
don't give them a tax break, because all they're doing is you got CEOs with better wallets.
Mr. Reed?
But if you give them a tax break based on the innovation of the technology, the deploying,
And the
wouldn't you
price
then
of
also
the
get a
vehicle they sell.
disruptor? So wouldn't you get a disruptor that could come into the marketplace and that would say, hey, look at GM, you guys want to stay in your standard ways? I want to capture this market by offering this technology that's going to be cheaper, and that's going to provide more incentive for people to take on those CEOs who are
I'm
going to
sorry,
make.
but I just
correct
haven't
decisions.
seen prices go down when tax breaks for the companies.
And
Oh, so I disagree with that. So take
Give us
an
an
iPhone in regards to, or take, how should we?
How about drug prices or anything like that? You know, I
Well,
don't
drug
see-
prices, I would
Okay,
agree with
maybe
you.
that was the third rail and I should not have done it.
No, drug
But I just
prices,
see tax breaks going to corporations or CEOs and.
so let's take a TV. A TV, like, remember when flat screen TVs came out? How much were they? Thousands of dollars, right? $3,000, $5,000. And then as technology and the innovation came into play, and there were tax incentives with research and development that have been in the tax code for quite some time, they took advantage of it in order to get that next generation of TVs. Now, how many people have access to a TV that otherwise didn't have access to a TV at the price point of what, $200? For a nice
Are
large
they made in this
TV?
country? Are they made in this
That's
country? They're talking
what
about?
we're thinking. Every TV is made.
How many of those were
But-
vacation?
but if you're,
And what
okay,
did my Honda Civic cost me 15 years ago versus today? Because it
Okay.
didn't go down, and it's still a Honda Civic.
okay. So if you follow the TV scenarios to answer the question, how many more people have that TV in their household today than they did 15, 10 years ago?
And that's all due to giving a tax break to the manufacturer, you're
There
saying?
were incentives to those TV manufacturers and research and development and what they were investing in order to get that technology down to cost. And that was the market producing that price point that allowed people to access that TV by millions versus thousands. And from my perspective, now that's not apples to apples, but trying to illustrate the point.
Point is,
If we make that
labor on the
technology-
other side of the ocean and we sell them here for nothing, what's your point on it? How does that affect anything here?
Because more people in America have access to that TV. So if you made electrical vehicles more competitive at the price point when you go to the lot and buy the Honda Civic versus the Toyota Prius, I think most people would choose the Toyota Prius if that's the kind of vehicle they wanted to purchase. If all things were equal and the price point was lower, more people are, I would say, more people are going to buy
Yes, but how you
that
getting there
Prius.
doesn't.
So we make them overseas with slave labor and sell them here for a cheaper price? These cars?
Well, I would say a lot of those cars are being manufactured here in America, on American soil.
How do you
Most of
compare
those.
this to TV?
It's about the innovation of the technology is the point I'm trying to articulate. That if you provide that technology and that innovation, eventually the price point will come down and more people are going to buy that cheaper product. And if what we want is a cheaper energy producer, energy device that has lower emissions, that to me is a winning combination.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I gotta leave soon.
Sure.
Manufacturing is slowing. Is there anything you're gonna be doing to help them? I work across the border in Warren, but I'm sure it's the same on this side of the border. And we're seeing, not that people are getting laid off en masse or anything, but nobody's hiring. So,
Okay. Yeah, so this is a great clip. So immediately what we can do, my opening remarks, Mexico, Canada, helps manufacturers, hits the sweet spot, closes out the auto industry from these abuses that are funneling through Mexico, in particular in supply chains that are coming through. So that would enhance the automotive industry, and automotives is a cornerstone of manufacturing in America. And so Mexico, Canada is first. The China deal that looks like it's coming into existence in regards to some serious reforms and how we do business with China. That's coming here over the next, I hope, 1 to 2 months when they're supposed to ink the deal, so to speak. So that's good news. That's widely reported out there. It won't solve all the problems with China, but you got Mexico, Canada, China at a new level of trade. That should help a tremendous amount with manufacturing. The other thing that we were looking to do, especially with the China, is the intellectual property protections that we're advocating for and making sure are protected. Because a lot of that IP, and thank God we did tax reform, and there was a big component of tax reform that dealt with the territorial versus worldwide taxing system and the encouragement people used to have of taking their intellectual property for tax purposes because our uncompetitive tax code and putting it overseas. We fixed that problem, so now the IP is encouraged to stay in America. So if you couple all those together, I think that will get us through some of the storms that are ahead. But I would agree with you that if we do nothing, we are also seeing a lockup effect because of a couple things. Impeachment is causing a great amount of anxiety and concern that was gridlock in America, there's further gridlock as a result of it. 2, you've got some issues on the horizon with Medicare and Social Security as to their insolvency, and as you get closer to that insolvency date, there's a lot of folks that are very concerned making these investments to say, I don't know if you're going to be able to correct that problem, and if you wait till the last minute, it's going to take a tremendous amount of tax increases to cover that crisis, and so there's a lot of folks worried about that. And then the final thing is, on tax reform right now, remember it's a 5-year temporary provision to a large degree on the individual and some of the expensing provisions and other issues that are there, that a lot of folks are saying because of impeachment, because of the gridlock, because of the instability of Washington, D.C. and the upcoming election cycle, we're going to keep our cash off of the game, off the playing field, because we think those tax rates may not become permanent, and you're going to see that rate going up. So if we can make tax reform permanent, that would be also something to do.
Half of the town hall time is already gone. Can we go to the elephant in the room, which is the impeachment and the problems that the president's having
Sure.
putting his act together?
So as we opened, I figured there was questions on it. That's why I led with it straight on. I don't see smoking gun evidence there for an impeachable offense.
Because you won't read it?
No, because you didn't read the text. That's not true. I wrote the text.
Last name is Reed.
And we read it, and we read it, and we read this stuff, and I roll up my sleeves and I do this work. And if you read the transcript and you read what is out there and what has been available to folks.
That's not a transcript. The transcript is in some secret server
So you
somewhere.
read from the hearing? Those transcripts?
I don't have access to that.
What's the
No.
order of take to tell you that?
Process.
No, because they won't allow us in.
Look,
That'd be
let's.
All
right, it's open
First of all-
now, so you're still gonna be against it.
So-
Competent witnesses.
So
is a
first
good
of
thing.
all, we're not going to use language like that, sir. I think that's disrespectful to other people. And second, they won't let us in. That's exactly what is occurred. What I know, and what I have seen, even if you give every benefit of the doubt, what is the high crime? High crime, when you look at the Constitution, high crime, when you look at the Constitution,
I don't watch Fox
are,
News, I'm sorry.
hold on.
I like.
They are crimes that are generally subject to things like penalty of death, bribery in regards to selling out state
Extortion is
secrets,
bribery, isn't it?
selling out state secrets for personal financial gain. Those are the type of impeachable offense that are envisioned in the Constitution. So I understand you want to overturn.
No, no,
I understand you want to do that. I understand.
We have one question.
You don't understand.
One question. The question is this, and it was on the top of my list. Should a foreign country or a foreign individual aid in any political campaign of any politician? That's the issue.
Okay. And that's a
Yes
high
or no?
crime. So even if I'm
I'm
giving
not
you.
saying if it's a high crime. It is a crime because the Federal Election Committee says that you can't do that.
So then you supported the impeachment of President Obama on that crime.
What are you
He
talking
was found in
about?
violation of the FEC violation, had to pay $1 million fine, so you would then support the impeachment of President Obama.
Let's talk about Trump.
We're talking about Trump.
Well,
Obama's gone.
you can't do that. Impeachment. You're talking about impeachment.
You want to retroactively
And what-
impeach.
He paid the fine.
He paid the fine.
Okay.
And it wasn't passed.
Do you believe he should have been subject to impeachment then? If you're going to say that FEC violation is subject to impeachable offense by President Trump, then you would agree and you would be publicly
Okay,
stating today that you
if
supported
that's
the
your
impeachment of
point,
President
Did
Obama.
Obama pull a $400 million?
That's the whataboutism.
Now, if you
So he did what he
actually,
wanted.
now, if you actually listen to Joe Biden, President Obama, yes, he did.
Okay,
So-
ask him
Did he
if
send
he
his
has
personal
listened
lawyer over there?
to the transcript of all these
So,
witnesses who worked at
Joe
the State
Biden,
Department.
President Obama indicated they held up military aid based on an investigation in Ukraine.
And so
Now,
that
you
makes it
feel-
okay for Trump to
Yeah,
do it,
right, exactly.
right?
No.
If,
Yeah.
when you were raising your kids and they said, oh, but Johnny gets to go there, then you said, oh, well, if Johnny gets to, then you can too. It
What I'm
doesn't,
saying-
whataboutism doesn't cut it.
So if what I'm saying is when you're talking about corruption in a country, and that is what President Trump was referring to Joe Biden in regards to corrupt activity that he may have been involved with his son, and that's never been investigated, that's never been
Yes, it has.
investigated.
Oh, yes, it
That was supposedly
Let's
legal.
ask this
So if
question.
you truly honestly believe that Hunter Biden, who has no experience,
that's what they
no
do.
background, is entitled to a $50,000 a year
You
job.
are lying, sir. Stop.
That is just wrong. You're not dealing with the facts. You want to hear and take the facts.
Sir, the GOP was in charge
The point.
almost the entire Obama administration. So why were you not investigating it if he was so wrong?
Yeah.
So you can't say this, what about Obama, when you people were the one that were supposed to be policing corruption. But now, to sit there and say, no, we can't do that because we didn't do it then.
No,
The
that's not
House
what I'm
was
saying.
Republican
Yeah,
then.
that's
But what
exactly
we're
what
saying
you're
is
saying. If you're saying
It was not
Obama was a criminal,
impeachable
why
what they were
didn't you
doing.
act on it?
So that wasn't impeachable.
Yeah,
That's
it
the
totally
point.
is.
No, it's not.
Maybe
You
we
would've
need
thrown
to start
Obama out
holding
at a
our
heartbeat
politicians
if you
accountable for the things that they do, instead of just making it a political party free-for-all, where you only pander to your base and say crap to them, and you never address the real endemic issues that all of our politicians, every single one of them, keeps doing.
Appreciate
Why
it.
do you not hold yourselves accountable to ethical standards that all the rest of us are accountable for in our Constitution?
If I'm subpoenaed, I have to go.
Sir?
Ethical standards, horrible.
10 minutes on this
Depends
subject.
on-
Let's move on to another subject.
Especially on the left.
Yeah, on the left.
You guys gotta stop, you guys gotta find a secondary news source.
No, I think the gentleman's entitled to his opinion.
You do.
Okay, what news sources am I watching then?
Well, you said it's not fair.
Obviously not.
No, it's not.
State TV?
What?
I don't know what news sources you're referring to.
I have a
I don't even have cable,
But the conclusive position that you are taking, I don't agree with. I just do not see
Okay, so in a
impeachable
month or
offense
two from
there.
now, when the next shoe drops, what are you gonna make excuses for then?
All I'm saying is,
Every day, a new thing.
So you're saying that next year, some other president can go to a foreign country to
Yes,
get
that's what
aid
I'm
to
saying.
help them in their election? You're saying that's
That's what I'm
okay?
saying.
What I'm
We've done it
saying is,
before.
he was investigating
I'm not talking about
corruption.
that. I'm
He was
talking about going to the
investigating
future.
corruption.
If this is okay,
If a president asks, this is what I will say to you, sir. If a president asks a country that we're giving foreign aid to, are you corrupt?
no,
Is
that's not
there
my
corruption
question.
going
That is
on?
not my question.
I am okay with that request.
No,
Because
that's
I
not
don't
my
want
question.
taxpayer dollars going to a
This isn't-
corrupt
we're not on Fox.
country
They
that
never
we're
can answer
doing.
that question.
I am
They
just telling
refuse to
you,
answer it.
you're talking impeachment, you are talking
I'm
about
not
high
talking
crimes,
about.
and I'm not
the law.
talking about an FEC violation as warranting a high crime. That to me is
Foreign
not
government interfering with our
impeachable
elections.
offense.
Is that okay?
And
Is
what
that
I'm
okay
going
for a
to,
foreign country to?
Yeah,
How about this? If he's so innocent, how
It's not okay? Why is it not okay?
for a foreign country to manipulate our election, that is not okay.
Is it okay to ask them to do it?
No,
Can
that's
we
not what
ask
was
them to
asked.
do
That's
it?
not what was
A
asked.
favor, please
That
give
was
me a
not
favor.
what was
A
asked.
favor
And
is
so-
asked.
Do you read the news besides Fox?
Sir, you can insult me.
Wait, I'm not insulting you, I'm asking you a serious question.
And I'm just saying, you can.
You know you're sitting here lying to us, right?
No,
he's not lying,
I find
you
that
are.
offensive.
We
I
know you're
appreciate
lying
your
to us.
opinion. I
We're
know
not
your
stupid.
conclusion, I know your conclusion, I know your position. I'm trying to be respectful and disagreeing with you on your conclusion. And it's based on evidence that has been presented to me and that is out there that should be subject to a warrant of investigation.
Congressman, could I just interrupt?
Supervisor.
We've got about 40 people in this room right now, and so far, I've heard from about 4 or 5. I know a lot of hands are up there, so what I'd like to do is, if I could recognize the 2 women that are sitting behind you who've had their hand up for the last 10 minutes.
You wanna
So
go first?
One of you, if you have a question,
Yes.
Congressman.
What is your opinion on the whistleblower? Do you think he should be disclosed?
I don't believe the whistleblower per se should be disclosed, but more public information in this process and people that are coming forward would be good. So I think the whistleblower status should be protected. Now, there are procedures in law that deal with whistleblowers and their identification, and they should be respected. But I would hope if we're talking about impeachment, people would support more information coming out, not less.
How about his name, like his name, you mean?
Not the whistleblower per se.
Okay.
Depending on what the process is and what the legal situation is, or if the whistleblower wanted to come public, I would encourage folks to come out public because we are dealing with such an historic issue of impeachment. We're talking about overturning a duly held election, especially, we got 12 months. We got 12 months till the next election.
I have a different question than what she had. First of all, I hope you're following what has been coming out, the testimony of the State Department employees who have been employees for decades and who have honorable demeanor and reputations. So I hope you're listening to what they're saying.
Sure, absolutely.
And number 2, how do you feel about the way they've been treated publicly by, I'm not even going to say his name, the Twitter king, and all of his minions, how they're trashing these people who have done nothing but put their hand up, came forward publicly, they weren't whistleblowers, they came out publicly, and they're telling their story. What about that, Mr. Reader? Tell me about that.
So, the president, as he is the president of the United States, obviously I've had difference of opinions at times with the style that the president has deployed. And I think those attacks on individuals that are, in their opinion, stepping forward and sharing information they think needs to be disclosed publicly and needs to be part of this process should not be beaten up for doing that. I think we are a strong enough country, we are a strong enough nation, that if somebody disagrees with us or presents a complaint that maybe we don't agree with on its surface or at its conclusion, we're strong enough to take that as a nation. So that type of attack, I don't support, I don't partake in it, I don't participate in it, and we'll continue to take that.
Do you believe
position
what they're
forward.
saying?
In regards to the personal attacks and things like
No.
that?
Do you believe what the witnesses have been saying
I'm
in
trying
the
to
testimony?
listen to the witnesses in good faith, and everything I'm seeing leads back to this phone call, this alleged impeachable offense that they're saying is there, and I don't see the smoking gun evidence that they are saying that this warrants impeachment for. Impeachment, again, oversight, remember, there's two different things going on here. If you're talking about oversight in constitutional responsibility of a separate branch of government, holding the executive branch accountable, that can be pursued. You've seen it being pursued against President Trump for the last year, 2 years. We did it with President Obama on the Republican side very aggressively. That is different, in my opinion, than what we're talking about when you use impeachment as the tool to say we're only doing oversight over the executive branch. It's a very dangerous standard
Following
to
the
change.
Constitution.
Yeah.
Can you understand how people are quite upset about the thrashing of, like, Vindeman, I think this is his name, this is the gentleman that has, And this gentleman filled in a lot of the ellipses in this, not official transcript, but in the recording, not the voice recording, but the written recording of the phone call. And then, can you see why, and then you were saying that these hearings were closed, the process was closed, and we got to see Mr., the guy from Florida, Gates, put on this big show and order pizza and all that.
I didn't agree with that.
You did not agree with that?
I did not agree with that.
Okay, thank you, because I thought, how could he not understand that that is the process, that it needs to be a closed-door process up to a certain point, just like a grand jury. You have to gather and...
Not impeachment. Not impeachment.
This is not an impeachment.
It's not an impeachment yet. Impeachment is not a grand jury proceeding.
It's not
And the lesson when we looked at this, the lessons of Clinton and Nixon, and I talked to members of Congress that existed at that point in time and how they handled it, that started in the inquiry and the initial phases, one, in a bipartisan fashion, if you look at the record and you look at who was participating in that. Also, you had independent law enforcement agencies conducting those grand jury proceedings and other issues that were trying to do the investigation. That is not Congress doing that secretive, deliberative investigation.
Should Barr do it then, the Department of Justice?
He's the Attorney General, Department of Justice.
Yeah, they should do that.
And his conclusion was there are no crimes here.
Well, look,
That's
There
real
are no crimes
partisan.
here.
That's real partisan.
so maybe when we get the murder on Fifth Avenue that's on the security tape, maybe we can impeach him, maybe.
So,
No.
when you look at the history, when you look at the history, and I take this very serious because this is in a very historic moment for the nation's history. And so, there was nothing secretive in regards to Clinton and Nixon.
Yeah, but he
The
lied.
law enforcement, remember Ken Starr, who was empowered special prosecutor, the report he did? He used traditional law enforcement justice tools in order to do that investigation. The Attorney General, you may disagree with his assessment, you may disagree with his conclusion, but he is still the Attorney General, and the Department of Justice is still a respected body.
So if they don't do it, they don't do their job.
And maybe you're coming to that conclusion based on your disagreement, that conclusion about the Department of Justice because of your disagreement.
You do know that we're gonna judge you years down the road for this, right?
And honestly,
This is gonna judge you.
so let's just be very clear.
You're comfortable with that. You know what's going on, and you're comfortable being judged for this.
I pass the test, which is
Congratulations.
the mirror test, every day, and I'm very comfortable in our positions and where we have come.
Or are you just gonna retire next year and go away?
I'm running.
I-
We got a gentleman back here, and then one back here.
Would you consider perjury or obstruction of justice as a high crime? Or would that
You know,
be
the
impeachable?
Clinton,
As
the
Bill
Clinton, yeah.
Would our gutless wonder ever get in front and answer some questions on his own, or is he gonna tell everybody else to ignore their subpoenas and stay away, and he'll never answer any questions?
So it's a great question, because when I looked at the Clinton impeachment history and the documents around the Clinton impeachment, the lesson that was taught there, even perjury, didn't warrant impeachment as concluded by the Senate during that course of period of time.
But the House was
And
Republican.
that was, we're talking about impeachment and removal and those issues and high crime. So that should be a lesson to us. If you're pursuing perjury as the high crime,
Well, he'll never admit to wanting to go and get questioned, because he's a coward. How about obstruction, telling everybody not to go and give out their stuff? And then on top of that, how is it good for him to give written answers to when he's getting investigated? But now, if somebody else does it, it's a double standard. That's not good enough. Now, if it's against him, they have to come and talk. He won't let anybody write him up. But it's all right when he wanted to do it. That sounds like a double standard to me. Do you agree on that?
Okay.
Is that a double
I'm
standard?
trying to follow your conclusion.
Back when he was in the Mueller report, he gave us BS answers in writing.
Okay.
All right, now that's not acceptable from the whistleblower, because he wants to know who it is.
Yeah.
Even though that whistleblower is supposed to be protected, correct?
Right, by
So-
And here's everybody else, Rand Paul and all those other guys ranting and raving, we need to know who this guy is, even though the Republicans are the one that put the protections for them in place, correct?
So just so we're clear, as I indicated before, I respect the whistleblower's protection, and I encourage that to be continued going forward. But I
Okay,
would
but
encourage
President's
more
double
public
standard.
information.
Our president's double standard, then it's all right for him to give written answers, but not for this whistleblower.
I guess I'm agreeing with you on the whistleblower protection status.
Okay,
He's talking about
are
the
you-
writing answers.
Well, you could call the president a hypocrite, and it'd be all right for him, but not for the whistleblower.
I think we've answered the question, so.
No, you didn't. Can we call him a hypocrite saying it's all right for him, but not the whistleblower?
I don't get into traditionally, if you come to our town halls, name calling is not something I do.
Okay, well, traditionally, went out the
And I
window when
haven't
we
called.
elected this clown president, because he's acting like nothing but like a jerk.
Right.
And you can ask your other guy that was down there telling Nancy Pelosi must suck to be as dumb as she is, which I don't always agree with her, but I would never say that. But other
I wouldn't
congressmen
say
and
that
everybody
either.
else are saying stuff like that.
And I
If my
disagree with
kids
that.
would see that, I'd be embarrassed.
Yeah, and that's
The way
where,
the Republicans act right now,
and that's
and
where, just like,
yes, some Democrats too.
So let's enough.
and just like,
That's really a
I disagree,
representative.
and just like I disagree
Right
with
off
the
the
folks
bat.
barging in and engaging in that, I disagree with that.
Would you stand up to somebody and say you did that wrong?
No.
Yes, of course, and I'm doing that now, I've done that publicly, I've done that on public TV, I've done that on
So you're gonna
national
go
TV.
say, President Trump, you're a hypocrite because you're allowed to give written answers, but nobody else is.
I appreciate
He can't
your-
say that. I'll defend him here. He can't say
No,
that.
I can't, I know he wouldn't anyway.
Is it acceptable to you that the president lies every day, and have you stood up to him and tell him to stop lying to the public on a daily basis? We don't know anything, whether it's factual or not, from whatever comes out as.
So I've expressed my difference of opinion on the president's style and commentary.
That's not style.
And I have, in commentary, and I've expressed that concern.
You see how
to the
things
president.
are?
Keep those conversations between the president and myself based on our relationship and our friendship and the
And has
work
it
that
worked?
we've done together.
Has it worked?
The issue of telling the president and him following that advice, I
Then
can't
maybe you should
speak to
ask
that.
him to resign, and end this whole process.
I mean, if you really are sincere about it, yeah.
So you have 12 months to another election, and I trust the people, so that if the people say whatever the president is saying, and your conclusion is he's lying or not lying, whatever item it may be, I trust the wisdom of the American people. I really don't think the American people are stupid, as a lot of folks down in Washington, D.C. Believe that they are, and that they can be hoodwinked and things like that. I don't believe that.
And that's why the
I think
House went
the wisdom-
Democratic in 2018.
The people spoke.
And that's why it went Republican in 2010.
And that's why we wanted
Democrat
impeachment.
in 1990. You could, the wisdom of the American people is amazing to me.
It's better
And
than yours.
I trust the wisdom, and I've heard, it's so disrespectful, but I respect your ability to call me names and things
I
like that.
just said
That's
wisdom, I'm
fine.
just talking wisdom.
And we'll continue to dig it. And so what I try to do is do what I can do. One, I don't generally engage in any type of bomb throwing or anything like that. I show up at these town halls to have the conversation, to try to really find out where we may be able to find common ground. And when we can't, we can have the exchange. But at the end of the day, we're not leaving the room, because I find if you leave the room, then any chance of constructive dialogue ends. And that we can't do in America, because at the end of the day, we're all in this together as one nation.
I do have a couple more
Okay.
questions. So Andrea wanted to know why you voted against the resolution condemning President Trump's decision to pull U.S. troops out of Syria.
So I disagreed with the bipartisan Republican and Democratic majority on this, because you talk about hypocrisy and things like that. If you recall, and I think some of you were at the town halls, when we had the question from President Obama whether or not we should go into Syria, and whether or not we should put boots on the ground in Syria. And as you recall, and as I stated then and I state now, I did not see the military objective in Syria by putting our men and women in harm's way in regards to the mission that they were asked to do there. So I opposed President Obama going into Syria. And we never authorized, going back to the Constitution, we never authorized our men and women to be on the ground in Syria. To me, that's a very constitutionally troublesome position, as Congress has the power to declare or not declare war. And so when the president brought the Syrian troops back, I said, I agree with that, because they should not be there to begin with, because they were illegally there. I did not see the mission in regards to putting our men and women in harm's way in Syria and risking their lives in Syria. And so when he pulled them back, I said, I agree with that. And I continue to support that position.
Why are they still
Congress should, you've got, great question. They should pull them all back. Congress should do its job. The cowardice of Congress of not going on record in regards to this is troublesome to me. And so if we're going to send our, and the reason why is politically, I can tell you the conversations that are occurring on the floor of the House. Tom, why do you keep advocating for a politically toxic vote that you would have to take if you're going to put men and women into war zones? I said to them, to their face, if you're telling me that we're going to ask men and women of our military to risk their physical lives in regards to a mission that we're asking them to do, I can risk my political life in regards to taking that vote up or down. And so we will continue. And so I appreciate that. And that's where, when we go into harm's way, now I do recognize, and this is where it gets tough, because there are imminent threats that are going to occur, where the president, the commander-in-chief, needs to have the ability to address that threat and to take it to the extreme to illustrate the point. If nuclear missiles are on their way to American soil, an act of Congress should not be warranted in order to defend us from that missile attack or to respond to that missile attack. That being said, that threat is short-term, it's imminent, and once the threat has been addressed, I do believe Congress needs to be leading on these issues, because when we unite on these issues as a country and as elected officials, the mission is clear. We don't get stuck in these long-term entanglements. We don't get stuck in these missions that creep out of their original mission. 9/11 is a great example of it. The authority that was thrown back in my face as to why our men and women were in Syria to begin with was the threat from Al-Qaeda, 9/11. That threat is different today than it was back then. And so this is something that we'll continue to advocate for as we go forward.
But do you agree with the way he, the way he did it? Do you not agree that he should have consulted with the military, that he just gets an idea in his head and puts it out on a tweet? Is that how we're going to live from now on?
Well,
as long as he's around?
What's the comparison, Representative, just so I understand? What was the comparison when the red line, when Syria red line, that when we were going to bomb their own people, gas their own people, they did, that red line was not crossed by President Obama. And then subsequently, that whole problem got solved by Obama discussing with the Russians to solve that issue there. Now we're worried about the Syrians, us having our people over there. I just don't get the logic. I'd rather see our people, our men at arms, help our southern border than to help people over in Syria. I don't know what we're concerned about those individuals there.
And that, I agree with you in regards to the assessment of the mission that is being asked of the men and women, and I never saw it to begin with, nor do I see it continuing today. Now, to the issue of withdrawing the troops, now, do understand that the president made it very clear that he wanted to withdraw the troops. He wanted to disengage across the world. That was a campaign issue that he raised, and those issues. I know that there had been presentations to the Joint Chiefs in regards to, we want to do this, and at times there was pushback, and they agreed to, and the president agreed to change their course, some right up to the last minute, that this was going to be done months ago, if not a year ago, in regards to it. And the bottom line is obviously he made the call. Could it been more orderly in regards to how it was done, especially to our Kurdish friends that were there with him? I recognize and accept that constructive criticism of that decision.
Genocide, right?
But Now, as we pull back and we see what has occurred
That's
here.
Fox News, right?
Now, as we.
Oh, no, you don't.
No, we don't let you do, you get pretty much.
So we now have a situation in northern Syria that has, it's stabilized from the immediate withdrawal that occurred in regards to it. And that's a good thing, and hopefully long-term it holds.
Why
And we
did
have
Jim
that
Mathis
safe zone
resign?
25 miles.
Why did Jim Mathis resign? Wasn't that over the same issue?
Don't know I think this was part of the disengagement, disagreement, because there are a lot of military
that's a
folks that
pretty-
believe we should be in this forward posture in perpetuity in regards to these
He's a
entanglements
very
across.
respected general.
No, and the military position has been very hawkish in regards to their, in my opinion, in regards to asking our men and women to go into hostile areas on a regular basis for a long-term period of time.
Republican theme for the past several decades. I mean, look at W. Bush. I mean, that's normal for the military.
So I guess maybe I'm showing I'm disagreeing with that orthodoxy, but I disagree with that policy and position. These long-term forward deployments in hostile zones is not sustainable. And I will generally, don't get me wrong, long-term, where we have formal treaty alliances, agreements with countries, with forward bases in different hostile areas of the world that aren't on the front line, but we have access to those bases in order to take on that threat when it arises. That to me is different than a hostile war zone. So when you talk about the bases in Saudi Arabia, for example, that came up during this whole withdrawal, where the troops were going from Syria into Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, we have a long-term military agreement with Saudi Arabia, and they are not militarily put in a hostile zone. They're in a relatively stable area of the world, quote unquote. They're there so that when the threat arises, you have that ability to address that threat, imminent threat immediately. That to me makes sense. But to put men and women in harm's way in hostile zones, I'm always going to stand with Congress having to do its job. Okay? Go ahead.
We're getting towards the end, so I'm going to switch over to a little bit of a softer topic, I guess. Herb wants to talk about scams. Every 20 minutes getting asked for money. I'm not sure if he's referring to telemarketers or something along those lines. Herb, is that you?
Yes.
Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit for Todd?
Yeah, what do you get?
Yeah, every half hour, we get on television, send me money, send me money, send me $11, $15. How do we know who to send them to? Or is it a scam? Somebody should be able to say, this is a scam, don't send it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I thought the question was going to go not from the TV angle, but I know on like the phone calls and the internet and all those things, and I think we're all millionaires in this room. We've all received those emails of the lottery winnings in Nigeria. Maybe you're getting a Nigerian call right now that you're a lottery winner. But so my hope is there are roles of government in regards to this. And when we find the scams, and being in Social Security, I deal with the Social Security Administration, they mine this pretty aggressively and actively. They try to stay out there and send out the alerts. You may have received the alert from like ARP and other organizations that are working with Social Security to notify people, hey, don't fall for this scam. You see them, they're a dime a dozen. Now, we can do it, but it's like a whack-a-mole. It's like all of a sudden you take down one and they create another one, and the technology is deployed. So what we always encourage folks to do, if it sounds too good to be true, one, probably not true. Second, check with people like us, call the office, because we're getting updates from the FTC, we're getting updates from the Social Security Administration office, and say, hey, have you heard about this? What's this all about? And we can, generally if we don't know, we can make phone calls to figure out if it's a scam or not. I know law enforcement is very open to phone calls, so these guys do a great job in regards to it, and just put them on the radar, especially if you see these things happening in neighborhoods, because we're starting to see a lot of it where they target, the technology is so good that they can target neighborhoods so that when they call you, they know that the person you talk to that trusts you is X, Y, or Z, because it's amazing the amount of information that's out there. And so they'll try to get you to vouch for them to Allison because she has a friendly relationship in regards to a trusting relationship with you. So it's tough. It's tough. So what I always encourage people, if you're going to give money, if you're going to do charitable efforts or things of that nature, give it to people you know. Give it to your local community, not-for-profits, give it to your local church, give it to your local folks that you really know, like the supervisor and things like that. That are in a position to vouch for these local fire department.
Wait a minute, the press is here, let's not say that.
So, all right, so we took care of the waiting questions, Jeff?
Maybe winding down to where we started off. What is the procedure of getting that bill passed, USMCA? I mean, so is there, you say the House ready to vote for it, the Senate will approve it, everybody wants it done? How come it's not getting done?
So, right now, the Plan A that is being deployed, and this is a good way to go about it, to be honest with you, I support this, is to try to work out legitimate concerns that folks have in regards to the majority of the House and the Speaker's office that they raise on. There's generally questions about labor enforcement, there's generally questions about the biologic provisions in particular, and also overall enforcement of the agreement. And they have been doing amazing amount of work. The trade ambassador, Bob Lighthizer, folks, Wilbur Ross and her team have been working with Nancy Pelosi and their team, trying to iron those things out. Think they're close, to be perfectly honest with you, substantively on any of those concerns. So then Plan A is work out all those in good faith. The Speaker controls the initial vetting.
We're not at the point of a vote at this point.
We're close.
I kind of understood it to be that the vote is imminent, but nobody's taking initiative to pursue the vote.
Right now, no, it's subject to the Speaker. She controls, red or green light. Now, if she says no, there's a lot of us that feel this is so important that there's a Plan B and a Plan C that could potentially be deployed, because there's a lot of us on both sides of the aisle that feel we should have a vote on this, not one person control that green light, red light. So if that doesn't work, now it gets ugly, it's not the preferred choice, that we execute that and force this vote to occur, even though the Speaker may disagree with that.
Then what's McConnell going to do with it?
McConnell will take it up. McConnell, I think, knows that the support is there. It's good substantive policy. A lot of the issues have been really updated and addressed.
Well, that would be one thing he'll bring up anyway.
That would be helpful. That would be helpful. Now, I will tell you, when impeachment goes over there, when the trial is held, the rules of the Senate are such that you think it works slow now, they literally cannot process any legislative items or appointments.
Why is that?
How the Senate works, the Senate rules. And they shut down, actually, there is a rule, knowing some of the senators, that if a Republican and Democrat are seen publicly talking as senators when the impeachment leaves the House and goes to the Senate, they're subject to arrest and discipline as a result. That's how historic and how high of a standard impeachment is, historically speaking and constitutionally speaking. So that is that would be a real problem in getting anything done if that's the standard the Senate is, given the problem with the Senate to begin with in regards to processing stuff, but it's even worse.
Can I say something on the trade agreement?
Yeah.
People seem to be bashing Nancy Pelosi, and Larry Kudlow, who is Trump's own economic advisor, says she's been really cooperative, trying hard to get things to happen.
Give her credit for this, yes. That's why I said.
You were kind of bashing her.
Well, I'm not. What I'm saying, the preferred A, the preferred Plan A.
Implying that she's denying or delaying it. Here's the reality. Part of it, like you say, the enforcement, because we're talking Mexican labor that I don't think until recently were even really allowed to organize.
That's true, and actually what Mexico has done legislatively and under the new president enacted the law, labor protections that we haven't even seen in existence ever. That legislatively has been done by Mexico.
And they're waiting, I think Pelosi is waiting to make sure that they actually have the funding to enforce it.
You're right.
So this trade agreement will actually help unionize Mexican laborers. This is truly a landmark trade agreement.
Totally agree with you.
And part of the sticking point, they're understandably AFL-CIO, Trumka, not to be confused with Trump. He doesn't want it to be applying a lot of pressure to not have it signed until these enforcement issues are ironed out, and it sounds like it is getting close.
It's getting very close.
It is, it hurts farmers, it's, but here's the numbers. There's about 2.6 million farmers. There's about 12.7 million AFL-CIO members. So to go ahead and try to sign a treaty without Trumka and without the backing of AFL-CIO, I can see why Nancy Pelosi wouldn't want to do that, especially until these enforcement measures are in place.
And so as I indicated, I support Plan A,
Yeah.
which is give it much room, and there's been about 3 to 4 months of serious negotiations getting to these issues and coming up with solutions. But at some point in time, if they don't work, or you get to the point in time when it's just, it's a rope-a-dope situation where, you know what, you keep moving the goalpost, we in good faith come back with a solution to enforcement on this, Mexico comes back, passes legislation, gets it signed into law, Canada and America agree to resources to make sure the judges for labor enforcement are in place, that we share that resource and the dollars are shared amongst all 3 countries to make sure those labor provisions are actually enforced in Mexico. Those are good faith movements that have been achieved in order to address this concern. So at some point in time, there's going to have to be a calling of the question.
Yeah.
And my hope is, to your point, that Plan A, Nancy Pelosi goes, you know what? This is good enough. We worked out a lot of these issues. Let's have a vote. We go to the floor, goes through the process. It's a bipartisan agreement. Democrats, Republicans support it. It goes to the Senate. Democrats, Republicans clearly have to support it because you need 60 votes in the Senate to get it done. That, to me, is the best course coming down the pipeline because now you got both sides coming together and saying this is good for the country long term. And hopefully it breaks further gridlock because it feels so good to do that. Maybe there's other things that we can say, let's agree on these things in regards to drug testing and other issues that are out there. We're out of time. Well, we got a little passionate there at times, but that's okay. That's what we love about America, is to have this debate. And at the end of the day, thank you guys for coming out. Thank you. And if we can help, give us a call. That's what we're here for. And don't get scammed.